Okay. In the following, I want to actually discuss the law of government in industrialization, especially from Taiwan's perspective. Okay. Usually, we say that we need government intervention unless it's a market failure. Okay, unless it's a market failure. And under what circumstances that we may have encountered the problem of market failure. First one is so-called asymmetric information. Under asymmetric information, usually it is buyer or the seller who has more information than the others. And in that case, usually we will see that the side with the better information will take advantage of the other side. Okay? And a common phenomenon that generates from this asymmetric information is called Gratian's law. The Gratian's law actually tells you that the bad money drives good money out of circulation. In our case, in asymmetric information, for example, in the used car, second-hand car, you find that the quality of the product is uncertain. Therefore, here the buyer has full information, the seller has the full information about the car because he owns the car. But the seller, but the buyer, who has no information at all regarding about the used car. So at this, in this situation, it is asymmetric information. The seller will take advantage of buyers. And in this case, we know that the bad quality car in here will drive good quality car out of the market because bad quality car will pretend to be good quality car. And in that case, then consumers no longer willing to pay a higher price for high quality car. Therefore, in this case, high quality car will go out of market. Okay, so that is what we call bad money drives good money out of circulation, out of the market. And in this case, we say that good market, some kind of market or high quality products may disappear from the market. And that is what we call market failure. No market for good quality cars, no suppliers. Okay? And the buyer don't want to pay higher price because the quality is uncertain for him or her. So this is one called asymmetric information called the market failure. The second one is due to externality arguments. Externality, for example, pollution, that is bad externality. Pollution generates social costs. And this social cost usually is paid by the whole society. The one who actually, the polluters, they never actually pay the cost of pollution. So in this case, then this externality is also cause no market for this externality, no market for pollution. Okay, so and again, it's a market failure. Social cost is not taken into account. Okay? And the other argument for the market failure is the public goods argument or infrastructures, free rider problems. Everyone needs public goods or infrastructure, harbors, okay? But no one wants to supply it. We have demand but no supply. So again, it's free rider problem lead to market failure. Okay? And also, transaction cost arguments or rules of game arguments, the institutions and the legal arrangements and the enforcement, these are all included in the so-called transaction costs. Transaction costs may be too high such that it prevents from transaction and therefore market failure. Okay? Because there are transaction costs. The cost of production may be low, but however the transaction cost is too high such that it prevents from transaction, from forming the market. And usually it is rule of gains or institutional arguments or legal arrangements that prohibit from forming a market because the transaction cost is too high. Okay, and how to reduce the transaction cost become very important issues. For example, government should set up the rules of game or institution or legal arrangements to reduce the transaction cost. So again, we have this kind of transaction cost argument leads to market failure. Or in these kind of different arguments for market failure, it implies that we need government to restore the market. We need government intervention in the sense that the market can be restored. Okay, so the important argument here is that we need intervention by government under certain circumstances. In particular, those circumstances lead to market failure. But those intervention is not to replace the market. It's not a substitute for market. Instead, it's try to help to restore the market. Okay, so government's role in this market failure is not to substitute for the market, but instead try to set up a good arrangement or procedures to help the market functioning. And that is why I'm saying the pro-market policy is very important. The pro-market is aiming to improve the market. The policy is aiming to improve market. Okay? That's the major argument. So a pro-market or market-friendly approach is the major argument here for government intervention. Government policy toward the creation of appropriate price and income incentive structure is crucial for the reallocation of resources of private sector to higher value-added economic activities that complying with the competitive advantage those countries possesses. Okay, so the market-friendly approach is that government interventions, and that kind of intervention is trying to create appropriate price and income incentive structures to help the reallocation of private sectors, make the market functioning, to facilitate, not substitute the role of the market. It's very important, the so-called pro-market or market-friendly approach of government policy. So the role of government in industrialization, the main responsibility of the government is to provide a favorable investment climate during the process of industrialization. And those favorable investment climates include social and political stability, right? Social and political stability, a better environment. Nowadays, a lot of countries, why those developed countries hesitate to invest in those emerging economy or developing economy is because of social and political instability that hinder foreign direct investment in that particular countries. It's a country risk involved. So first thing is the government should try to provide a social and a political stability that will help, as I say, that provide a right incentive structures. A financial system, for example. Financial system usually is fragile. In the sense, for example, banks. Actually, it's the financial intermediation is the channel between investors and depositors, right? And you need financial intermediation to bridge the two sides, as a bridge for two sides, right? But financial intermediation, so financial intermediation will facilitate the investment and saving, right? But the problem is that financial intermediation is fragile, in the sense that, for example, bank is a very important financial intermediation. Bank is depositors deposit their money in bank, but bank use this deposit to make a loan to firms, right? And the banks usually they didn't have any, they didn't require any kind of investment. All they need is be a bridge between depositors and investors. But the problem is that if all the depositors or every depositor run to the bank and want to withdraw all their deposits, what happens? Even the most famous bank in the world will all collapse, because it's not possible for them to pay all this money back to all its depositors at the same time, because they already make a loan. They borrow short and lending loan, They borrow short from depositors and lending loan to investors. So if all the depositors rush to the bank and they want to withdraw their deposit, then the bank will automatically collapse, no matter how strong the bank is. So that's the intrinsic fragility or the weakness of the banking system. So in that sense, then of course you need government to stabilize the financial systems. For example, the central bank now is very important. Central bank as the last resort of the liquidity. Okay, the central bank is the last resort of all banks. Okay, so financial system, for example, you need a government strong backup of the financial system. Another thing is tax system. Tax system is also needed because government is not a productive unit. Okay, and the government needs to do something, but they didn't have any resources. It's not a productive unit. So how can they do? It has to tax, to get a revenue from tax, and then paid their spending by those tax revenue, right? So tax system is inevitable if you want to have government. And then appropriate tax system is very important because the incentive for private sector will be distorted by tax system, and inappropriate tax system will distort the whole economy. Okay, so tax system again is very important, provided by the government to influence the allocation of the resources. And the supply of infrastructure, as we say that, is also the role of the government. If government, for industrialization, then government needs to provide a solid and a concrete and sound transportation system, for example, to help the development of the whole economy. You need to build up an infrastructure, right? So the supply of infrastructure is also important, and it needs to be done by government. And during the industrialization, it is so important to lay down an infrastructure to facilitate business, private business. Okay? So again, the supply of infrastructure. The efficiency of the government's administration is also very important in the industrialization. The efficiency of the government administration. Okay? Reduce the transaction cost. Because, for example, private sector need to get a permission from government, need to apply for a license, for example. Okay, and if the government administration is so tedious that you may take years to get a permit, a month to get a permit, or days to get a permit, it make a big difference. Okay, so efficiency of government administration, to provide an efficient government administration is also important, an important role played by government. And of course, education system, as we had before. Because if we viewed education as we show you in Taiwan's case, it has externality, strong externality. You see, the private return is only 7%, but the spillover effect is 22%. So a huge externality for the whole economy. And therefore, if education has this kind of externality, of course, we need government support for the education system. At least the kind of compulsory education system is required, such that majority of people, or all the people, or citizens, they receive certain level of education at the minimum level of education, which is good for the whole society. Okay, education system. And the protection of private property is also very, very important. For a market economy to work, you need a well-defined private property ownership. Okay? The capitalism or the market-oriented economy heavily relied on well-defined property rights, private property rights. If not, then we become the communism. Right? Everything is shared by everyone. No private ownership. And if that's the case, then no private incentives at all. Why should I work hard? Nobody will try to work hard because everything is shared. Output is shared by everyone. Lose interest. So for the market to work, then you have to protect private property rights. And in order to enforce the private property rights and protect private property, you need government to do that. Yeah?
I know in Taiwan you have ethnic group.
What group? What kind of group?
Ethnic group.
Aborigines. Yeah.
You have
Sure. Every citizen in this country, they can own their own piece of land, and then they can purchase their own piece of land. It's a private goods argument, okay? If you have private property rights, then you can own your own goods. Sure, Aboriginal tribes, they all have their own property. But instead, in the case of, okay, there are some public land. For example, they claim that that is their own collective land, okay? That is the whole mountain, for example, or the whole village. They think that that's the property of the village, okay? But in our sense, of course, we think that's the property of the country, okay? But for every individual, you can own a piece of land. That's no problem, okay? But Aborigines, they claim that for themselves, for their ethnic group, they think a particular land is themselves. It's for them, this particular group. That's another issue to argue. Okay, it's a political argument. Okay, here is purely for private ownership. Private ownership by each individual. Okay, private ownership by each individual. Okay, so you can see all this. It's not to list all, but here actually tell you very important parts that can be played by government, and which is important for the functioning of the market and also for the functioning of the whole economy. And it makes the economy work more smoothly or works more efficiently. Okay? And we know that there are at least 3 ways for the government to finance its spending. Okay? By tax, through tax. You tax people and you get certain percentage out of their revenue received. Or you can issue debt, public debt. Government borrow from domestic consumers or foreigners. You can issue debts, right? Public debts to the public, domestic public, or you can even issue public debts to foreigners. Debts, okay? 1, 2, okay? And third one, printing money. Just by printing money, it's what we call debt monetization. Printing money is you borrow from others without paying anything. It's a free money. Okay? But of course, this one is the easiest way to do. But it has a very strong side effect. It leads to inflation, hyperinflation, and eventually lead to the collapse of the monetary system. And of course, the whole political regime may collapse as well. Okay? But this is the easiest way. So otherwise, you have to either tax or issue debts. And if when you issue debt, actually you borrowing from future generations, because eventually government has to pay back this debt, and who pays this debt back is the future generation. The future generation, government tax future generation It's not tax today. This debt is actually a future tax for future generations. Here is tax. Direct tax is the tax for this generation, the current generation. So either you tax current generation or you tax future generation by issuing debt. These two ways are all the same. Tax today or tax tomorrow. The third one is something that you can do by printing money only, but usually this is not an appropriate way to do the third one. Okay? And the financial intermediation I just mentioned is efficiency allocation of funds, the bridge between the lender and the borrower. Okay? And also the financial intermediation will be able to create money through liquidity, create money. Okay, because financial intermediation has a money multiplier effect from the banking system. So banking system will actually create liquidity for the society. But this financial intermediation has actually here has a weakness, an essential weakness, which is bank runs or domino effects. Bank run or domino effects. The one I just mentioned. Everybody rush to the bank and want to withdraw all its deposit. Then it will become bank run or domino effect. If everybody panics about banking system, then everybody will rush into their own bank and every bank will collapse one after the other. That is what we call domino effect. 骨牌效应, domino effect. Okay? So it has these drawbacks, therefore we need financial intermediary, we need some kind of mechanism. For example, FDIC is one kind of mechanism called Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. Okay, come and help to establish a federal deposit insurance corporation to back up for each bank. In the United States, each bank account has tens, I think it's 100,000 US dollars insurance. In here is 1 million NT dollars for each banking account. If the bank is under the insurance of this, for example, FDIC corporation in here in United States, and here we have the similar system. And tax system here. We need the tax system because government is not a productive unit, and you have to tax to finance government expenditure. Okay, and also you can use tax to correct externality, right? Free rider problems. Okay, the pricing public goods might not be appropriate. Okay, because free rider problems, each one will free ride on others. So in that case, you cannot price the public goods. You may have to tax everyone in order to support for the public goods. You cannot charge people for public goods. Okay, sometimes, and you have to tax instead. Okay, or to correct for the externality, you will use the called Pigouvian tax for negative externality, or Pigouvian subsidies for positive externality. Negative externality, for example, pollution. So you can impose pollution tax. Okay? For example, gas emission tax for gas. Because gasoline may generate air pollution. So you can impose energy tax, for example, for the gas. To correct for this externality. So a tax is needed. Okay, and the subsidies, tax subsidy, subsidized for what? If the kind of activity has a positive externality, for example, R&D. R&D has a kind of spillover effect to other firms through R&D. If others have some innovation, and that innovation may encourage you to seek some further information, further R&D. And in that case, then you should subsidize the externality. You should subsidize their activity to correct for externality. And in here, negative, you have to tax this activity for negative externality. For positive externality, is subsidized. Okay? And also the need for tax system which means that the need for the government. It is only government who can impose tax. Okay? And another thing for tax system is that you need to redistribute income or wealth across different people. It's for social justice. Okay? For social welfare, then you have to redistribute wealth across individuals. Then you may have progressive income tax, for example. Progressive income tax, the higher income groups pay higher tax. And then you can transfer those tax to low income groups. Okay? So it's a redistribution of wealth through tax. And also negative income tax. Negative income tax is for low income people. If you have negative income tax means that you subsidize them. If their income below certain level, you subsidize them. That's why it's called negative income tax. It's a subsidy. Okay? All in all, if you want to redistribution of wealth, if you think redistribution of wealth is a social justice, and it will improve social welfare for the economy as a whole, and also generate stability and cohesion for the society, to have more equalized distribution, income distribution. Then, again, you need tax system to do that. And again, if you want to impose tax system, then you need government to do that. It is government's important role to impose tax system. So again, this is what government should do. And the phase of tax intensive, then we can think about this tax incentive from Taiwan's case. In 1945 to 59, the post-war economic restoration, the statute for the economic encouragement investment. This is a very important investment encouragement act, investment act. Okay. In our economic restorations, we actually impose this kind of tax, and also statute for it later changed to the so-called statute for upgrading industries. For upgrading industries, then government will provide tax incentives. For example, 5 years tax exempt, or tax holidays, for example, all these different tax incentives to encourage the investment of the promote for a certain industry at the very beginning, and then later it encouraged not industry but by their functioning. For example, encourage R&D activity, encourage investment. And the post-war economic restoration in 45 to 59, then you see that the customer duty was raised to 45% in average, and for export processing industries, their customer duties on import materials were refunded, for example. And this is to help the export processing industries to have export rebate. Okay, everything import has a custom. Okay, have a tariff. But so, for example, you import materials, raw materials, then you have tax tariff from these imports, right? But if you process this raw material and then export to foreign countries, then at export, when you export these goods, then you can have a tax rebate of those materials not used for export. Okay, so that is considered that you can actually get a rebate from the tax, and then you bear no tax for the intermediate inputs. Of course, that will encourage export activity, right? So this is the tax during the economic restoration period. The taxing system is in favor of the export activity, and this has been heavily used by China, okay, to subsidize their exports through tax rebate of their imports. The tax policy in this period was to protect and nurture the infant industries. Okay, you raise a high tariff on imports. Okay, unless you use these imports to export, then you can get a tax rebate. Otherwise, impose a high tariff to protect domestic industries. That's the major policy during a tax policy being implemented during the post-war economic period. And the statute for encouragement of the investment from 60s to 70s is a very important act to encourage the investment. The purpose of the statute was to encourage incentive investment and promote economic development. The statute includes tax reductions, the acquisition of industry land, and co-development of public utilities. Okay, they are all subject to the statutes that makes a lot of the tax reduction or deduction. And later, it's the same act, but later after 90s, then it changed the name to the statute for upgrading industries. Okay, in the object of the statute is to upgrade industries in Taiwan. The tax incentive is to motivate R&D, human capital formulation, automation, and the branding on international images. Those activities are considered as upgrading the industry, and they are subject to the subsidies from government. Okay, so in the previous case, that kind of encouragement in investment is targeting at the so-called winners, targeting at the so-called strategic industries before 90s. After 90, we no longer focus on any particular industry. Instead, we focus on the activity that we think is related to the upgrading of industry. It's no longer specified any industries. That can apply to any industry if they are doing in motivating R&D, human capital formulations, or promotion the branding, etc. Okay? So that's the major change in the policy. And here is the tax credit and reimbursement as the share of the revenue tax base. As you can see in 60 and 65, it's a huge revenue that's been collected and provided by the encouragement of investment. Okay, this is statute of encouragement. Okay, enacted in 60. Okay, and the revisions later in 65 again. Then you can see that actually it's a huge percentage of the tax revenue. And this is the statute for encouragement, and this statute for upgrading. Okay, and this is the amount of the tax reductions. As you can see, this in early period tax reductions to 60 billion, and nothing up to 112 billion under the statute for upgrading industry. Okay, but tax reduction is considered as a subsidy of the government. And this is the tax reduction to the tax revenues. And this is the effective tax rate for different industries. Okay, in different industries is subject to different effective tax rate. Nominal tax rate is the same, and effective tax rate is the real tax rate that applies. It's different. And then you can see that it's in favor of the, you see, low effective tax rate for electronics at the beginning of the in 19th century, in the 1990s, because government actually in favor of the IT industries. Okay, so you can see that the tax rate is actually lower compared to other industries. So actually, those IT industries actually they benefits a lot from government today, even today. And for the issue of education, the need for public education, okay, and I claim about it because credit constraint, intergenerational transfer, we have this argument before, right? It's need for public education. And we also know that the underinvestment through the poor families usually underinvest. And therefore you need a compulsory education to make sure that every kid they will receive a certain amount of education. And also the argument is for the social return, underinvest, because there is a positive externality, okay, spill over so that social return is high. Private return may be small, but social return is high. And that social return including productivity spill over, including better health through better education, including education leads to reduction of crime rate, and the social mobility and cohesion, and better political decisions, okay, and a better electorate. These are all benefits from education, and they are positive externalities, and therefore they are underinvested, and you have to increase a certain amount of education, and it may be overinvested due to the so-called credentialism, right? Everybody is trying to get the signal, and therefore it leads to over-education. Okay, and in that case, of course, there's over-investment problem. Oops. I think I was time is up actually, so I will finish this part. Planning within the free market is that the planning is by government, but within the free market. So government's intervention in the free market, but that intervention in the free market first is the picking the winners argument. Okay, and in order to do that, government need to have to be more capable than the private sector, and that is why usually you need a capable technocrat with problem-solving character. It's very important in Taiwan's case. Those government officials who are doing the economic planning, they are actually having, most of them having higher education, not only higher education, but also receive their higher education abroad in the United States or in Europe. Okay, and those technocrats with engineering background, so they are capable technocrats, and engineering background usually is problem-solving oriented. Okay, so they with the problem-solving character that helps them to design an economic policy which is helpful for the economic situation at that time. So they know how to pick the winners. So that kind of argument can be justified only at the very early stage of economic development, because it's much more simpler. The world is much more simple at that time. Okay, and it's easy to identify winners at that time too. So it subject to certain conditions that planning within the free market helps the economy. That kind of intervention actually helps the economy in certain extent. Okay? So last time we talked about the planning within the free market, okay, by the government policy. Actually, what government can do, especially during the early stage of economic development, is try to pick the winner. Okay, pick the winner, and at that time it is the labor-intensive light industries. Okay, including agricultural processing products, textile, polywood, plastic, simple machinery, electronic appliances, usually is assembly type. Okay, and other consumer goods. Okay, by picking those so-called industry that accord with the competitive advantage of Taiwan at that time. Okay, and those who pick the winners, actually, they are capable technocrats with problem-solving characters. At that time, for example, Minister of Economic Affairs and Minister of the Finance, those technocrats who are actually have either engineering background or receiving graduate degrees, also in engineering from abroad, okay, in UK and the United States. So these capable technocrats actually help to do the economic planning, okay, and they are more problem-solving oriented, and therefore step by step it solve the problem by picking the winners, which actually are good for Taiwan's economic development at that time. And the other also important things that the government can do is the so-called demonstration effects. Okay, because usually by involving investment in new industry or emerging industry, normally it involves a lot of risk and uncertainty. Right? and also a large, lumpy sum of investment required at the early stage. So in 1955, for example, the government encouraged leading manufacturers to pool their funds and with some American capital built a new plant in Miaoli, okay, somewhere down middle part of Taiwan, to produce synthetic textiles. This is a new product, never has been produced before in Taiwan, but it's promising in the future, especially regarding about the chemical product industry. So synthetic techniques at that time it's not possible to invest by private sectors. So government actually implement a policy to encourage the private sectors to engage in these new industries. So with capital of around $1 million, the Artificial Fiber Corporation became the first producer of the synthetic fibers in Taiwan. And it is government's effort that encouraged the private sector to develop in this direction. And without government's help, it is quite not possible for the private sector to have that kind of vision and also willingness to take that kind of risk and uncertainty to do something that they never produced before. Okay, so in this way, again, governing the market. Government actually provide a very strong demonstration effect because later it showed up this business is indeed profitable. And later, once it creates that kind of environment, then a lot of private firms join in the business. So other firms followed, and this industry eventually became a leading export earners for Taiwan's economy in 1960s. Okay, so if we want to say something regarding about the role played by government at the early stage of economic development that will help the private sectors, first I would say that governing the market, try to provide a market-oriented and pick the winners. Okay, to start with the industry that the country has the competitive advantage, and at the meantime also encouraged firms to invest in some emerging industries which is going to be promising in the future, but not at the moment, but it's going to be a promising industry in the future. And in order to encourage private sector, then government initiates the process and shows a demonstration effect to the private sectors. And then the private firms just, when they observe this kind of profitability, they would likely to join the wagon. Okay, so you have this demonstration as well as the jump into the wagon effect, and help the economy to develop and the industry to evolve toward more capital intensive. In 1960, also the important policy is try to stimulate and promote export industry, right? So statute for the encouragement of investment, we mentioned about this policy, which actually provides the tax holidays or tax rebate, for example, export tax rebate to the private firms to encourage them to invest. So a preferential taxation system provided by the government to encourage investment and also attract foreign direct investment into Taiwan. Okay. Foreign exchange reform and the liberalization of trade control between 58 and 66. Termination of the multiple exchange rate system, which favor importers with quota and penalize producers who imported raw material or intermediate goods. And therefore, since government favor different types of import products, and therefore it actually it favors export. But for the import, they impose different rates of tariff to different materials or products, imported products, and they're replaced by a single exchange rate. Okay, single exchange rate, $1 for 36.38 in 1958. Okay, so in that sense, then it reduced quite a lot of administrative works, and also makes the exchange rate more simplified to apply with the law of one price. Okay. So when you have multiple exchange rate, actually you distort the market by giving the same importer, but if you import different product, it was subject to different tariffs. So that doesn't make sense. Okay. Only things that make sense is to protect certain industry by imposing higher tax on that particular product, and that's the concept of so-called import substitution policy. Okay. So if we want to switch towards export promoting instead of import substitution, then you have to make this kind of liberalization in trade, and also to have single exchange rate. Okay. An export processing zone also was implemented, and it happened to be quite successful later in Kaohsiung, for example, and two more at the Nanzi, which is also close to Kaohsiung, and the Taodong and the Taichung, okay, middle part of Taiwan, in 1969, and simplify the tax rebate. Okay, because within this export processing zone, then it is in a full control. You don't have to have tax rebates. Okay, tax rebate means that you have to tax first and then you rebate later. So it creates a lot of complicated procedures. But once you are in export processing zone, then it simplifies the process. Okay, and industrial exporters exempt of import tariffs and commodity tax and a 5-year corporate tax holidays. Okay, so you can business that implemented in this specific EPZ, they actually can receive preferential taxation treatment. And labor-intensive industry was also encouraged to do in these EPZs. For example, electronic components assembly line. Okay, machinery, precision optics, plastic, leather, clothing, and leisure goods. These are most of the industry located in this EPZ. And of course, this happened to be also the industries that government encouraged at that time. The creation of job opportunity, of course, this is labor-intensive industries. Therefore, it also provides profound and abundant opportunities for jobs. And in 1970s, again, it's also important structure toward the policy towards structural adjustment. And that policy towards structural adjustment, very important, is the 10 major development projects for infrastructure. The first time we have such a comprehensive infrastructure project in 1973, especially during the first oil crisis. Okay. Usually during the first oil crisis, or to government try to deal with this kind of external shock, the most things that government can do is try to adopt the so-called expansionary fiscal policy. Okay, but expansion of fiscal policy depends on what kind of project you invest. Okay, and at that time it's very important that Chinese government implement the 10 major construction projects and construction toward the infrastructure construction projects. Okay. And later, the so-called 12 major development projects in 1978, the second oil crisis. And it laid down the basic infrastructure for the island the first time. Okay. And of course, that helps a lot. It smooths and shortens the transportation costs, reduce the transaction costs a lot. Harbors, those big harbors and the railroads, all these kind of, and also these electrify the train system, railroad systems. All those very important basic infrastructure was implemented. And government sponsored Industrial Technology Research Institute, (ITRIS), okay, in 73 and 74, which turned out to be very important to help the adjustment in 80s. Okay, the ITRIS. It formed a kind of the national innovation system, which led by the government research center. Okay, in ITRIS. Introducing the key and appropriate technology to the local firms. Okay, government, this ITRIS doing the basic research, basic applied research, and then it transferred to the domestic small and medium-sized enterprises. The Hsinchu Science-Based Industrial Park was also implemented in 1979. Okay, EPZs toward more labor-intensive, low-skill industries, and the Hsinchu Science-Based Industry Park aiming at high-tech industries. Okay, and it also provides the so-called clustering, industry clustering effect for information technology industries. Okay, so this is also a very important policy that helps the transformation and structural adjustment in Taiwan. And it facilitates capital-intensive and technology-intensive emerging industries. For example, personal computers, integrated circuits, and laser optics. These are all located in Hsinchu Science-Based Industrial Park. Okay, so that kind of policy towards lay down the infrastructure in the 70s and develop this science-based industry in the 70s, in the 80s, helps the smooth and helps and smooth the structural transformation towards more capital-intensive and technology-intensive. And in the 80s, of course, the very important thing is the further trade liberalization. Okay, the internal problem is high wage, labor and the social movements, environmental protectionism. All these create the so-called costs, and many land costs, labor costs to the local business or local firms. That's the internal problems in 80s, especially after the mid-80s. And external challenges including increasing protectionism and keen competition in the world market, namely because there are newcomers in the region and also from abroad. If Taiwan still producing the goods that is more labor intensive, then you're going to have more keen competition by the international competitors. Okay? And also the problem of the huge trade surplus in 80s. Huge trade surplus, in particular with the United States. And that also put pressures on appreciation of NT dollars. So it is important by facing these internal and external problems, the government's policy is trying to speed up the process of economic liberalization and internationalization. Because they know that it is by speed up this process, it will force the domestic firms to upgrade its technology in order to compete in the international markets. We have to shift towards more higher end products instead of lock into low-end product and competing with many new latecomers in the international market. So you have to do something to force the upgrading. And so, for example, by appreciation of NT dollars. And that means that those who are doing exports rely on labor intensive technology. Okay, they are going to suffer as the New Taiwan dollar appreciates, because their profit margin will be narrowed after the appreciation of NT dollars. So unless you have higher value added production process, then you are no longer be able to survive. Okay, if you only earn a small margin of profit, and therefore it is indeed the case for labor-intensive industry. Okay, so in that case, then it forces the firms either to move their production facilities or equipment abroad, to have so-called foreign direct investment in foreign countries, seek for cheap resources, including labor. Or if you remain in the domestic market, or if you remain in Taiwan, then you have to upgrade your production efficiency. And technology upgrading is important in this situation. Okay, and also 14 major development projects to enhance transportation system across the island. Okay, so in the 80s, then further trade liberalization and to provide the pressures and the driving force towards the technology upgrading. And improving the investment climate. Economic Renovation Committees was established in 1985, and Taxation Reform Committee in 87, and Labor Commissions in 87 again, and Environmental Protection Administrations in 1980. So you can see all these all happened in late 80s. Okay, and this in 81 is to get to provide a further a better investment climate, and the other thing is that, as you can see here, to protect labor. Okay, as you develop, as the economy develops, then you have to think about labor protections for the labor, and also the environmental qualities also taken into account. So these two is to as the economy develops, then these two will eventually set in, asking for the protection of laborers, to have better working conditions, okay, and also the environmental issues will arise because you are no longer pursuing for material needs. You will also like to have a better living environment. Okay, so these two definitely will increase the transaction cost. Okay, so you need this kind of reform. And this is the employment structure by industries. As you can see that the agriculture declined over time, and the industries, especially the manufacturing, in here. Okay, but you see that the data switching the industries from the so-called industry-oriented towards the so-called service-oriented industries start to increase in the 80s, late 80s and 90s. That the employment share of service sectors, the first time that the employment share of the service sector exceeds the industry sectors. And in 2TG industry, you can see this decline of these textile industries and the increase of the electronic and electrical industries, and also metal industries. And the other labor-intensive industries now is converged to about 5% within the industry sectors. So you can see these two industries is the leading industries in the manufacturing after it is emerging from 80s. Okay, from 80s, and then in the 90s it becomes the leading industries. And by occupation, I think I saw this before. By occupation, you see this is the managers and professionals. This is professionals. Still, most of these still remain because high-ranking. These two can be considered as a high-ranking skilled laborers, and this is middle skilled labor, and these are low manual workers. Okay, so this part of labor's decline, and this so-called high skill and middle skill worker increase. Their share increase, and also annual wage rate also increase over time, as you can see that, especially in the 80s. This is 80s. It accelerates. Okay, and after 80s, it becomes actually at even higher levels. And so you can see that labor cost becomes issues. Now we cannot rely on cheap labor. It's not possible for Taiwanese economy. But you can see that after 90s, it's not possible for Taiwan to still focus on using these low skill and cheap labors for our production. It becomes not possible. So it is important that Taiwan shifts after the 80s, shifts toward the so-called more capital-intensive and knowledge-intensive industries. Okay, and this is within the so-called these are for these more technology-intensive industries or ICT-related industries. Okay. And the response by private sectors is in response to these internal and external challenges. Private enterprises have adopted several approaches. Okay, upgrading their technology level for rising productivity, and increasing the level of automations in production process for reducing the dispute with the workers, and carrying out investment abroad to invest in abroad, not only for procuring and adequate supply of materials, but also for employing low-wage workers abroad, and therefore the triggering of the foreign direct investment. Okay, in the late 80s. So these are either you have to upgrade your technology and efficiencies if you remain in Taiwan, or you have to go and invest abroad. This is approved mainland investment by sectors. Okay, this is average. Okay, approved accumulated investment. Okay, so a large part is focused on manufacturing. Okay, this is service sector. Okay, used to be service sector used to be less than 5% in the early 90s. Now it's close to 12 to 13%. Okay, so it's a large improvement towards the more used to be mostly manufacturing, but you can see the sign of rising investment in service sector. And the reason for recent rise of the investment in China in service sector after 90s is because, especially after the year 2000, is because of aiming at the domestic Chinese market, and therefore you need service sector. For exporting, then you don't need service sector. And the top industries of the approved mainland investment by Taiwanese firms. Okay, and this is the top 5 industries together consists about 51% or 42%, and among these, the largest one is this one: electronic parts and components. Okay, followed by computer and electronic optical products, and the third one is the electrical equipment machinery. Okay, and then plastic products and the machinery and equipment manufacturing. So you can see that these are all either capital intensive or technology intensive. So these top 5 industries together, 52%. And if we look at those data in the previous slides, they are data collected by our government, okay, in Taiwan. And you can also look at data from China. Okay, China's statistics show that by all those inward, for China it's an inward investment. Okay, from Taiwan's perspective, it's our outward foreign direct investment in China. Okay, from China's perspective, it's an inward investment in China. If we look at the inward FDI in China by source, then you can see that. Okay, you can see that the HMT, this here, the HMT is the so-called Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwan. Those is what we call the overseas Chinese in the sense. Okay, 华人 okay this HMT, as you can see, the HMT share similar culture, speak same languages with China. Okay, so HMT is considered to be in all different measures or by its proximity to China and by using the same languages and share the similar business practice. In all different measures, HMT considered to be more close to China in the sense that their transaction cost is relatively low compared to other foreign countries. So as you can see that in the early stage of the Chinese economic reform, okay, in 80s and early 90s, that HMT, Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwan, their investment, foreign investment in China, about 64% of total inward investment in China. Okay, and the number, of course, as the time goes by, decline a little bit. Okay, decline over time. Okay, in the early 90s and the year 2000, in the year 2000, it drops to 58%. Okay, and now, from after year 2000, then it further dropped to 42%. So as you can see that the drop of the HMTs and the increase of the other countries. Okay, but still these two, Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwan, which actually is a small, they are all actually two special territories. Okay, and one Taiwan. Together is actually just in terms of the size is small, but however, in terms of their share of inward direct investment in China, still remain the largest one. If you take this as a group, it's the largest group. Okay, but however, their share is declining over time. Okay, of course, as China opens and integrates into the global world economy, then you can know that they are also increasing investment by Western countries or by foreign countries. So now, if you take these two, separate as these two, then the rest of the world actually together has a larger share than the HMT. Okay, but as you can see, HMT still remains a large proportion of China's inward foreign direct investment. And these are by the so-called foreign-funded enterprises. Foreign-funded enterprises means 外商, okay, foreign firms. Export from China by these foreign firms and the non-foreign firms, as you can see that. These are export. This rate is the export share, export values by the foreign investors, foreign firms, and these are the exports of non-foreign firms. Okay, and the share, and this is the share of the foreign firms. So in exports. So as you can see that most of the investor or foreign investors in China, they are aiming at exports. You can see starting from maybe 10% and gradually increase to 60% of the foreign firms invest in China, engaging in the so-called export activities. And for export activity, as you can see that the major reason for this is to take the advantage of cheap labor in China and aiming at international markets. Okay, so that is what we can see in the past 20 years. And this is the import and export share of these foreign-funded enterprises by regions. Okay, and this is export share of their export. Okay, and this is the export growth rate, as you can see. Okay, and this is export growth rate without these foreign funded enterprises. As you can see that actually the export growth rate of foreign funded enterprises is much higher than the rest of the firms. So the important policy, if I put all these together, if we want to name some of the important policies along the timeline, then you will see that the first one is the land reform, of course, right? It has the income distributions in the late 40s and early 50s. And also from 46 to 65, the U.S. Act, okay, which closed the investment and the financial gap, exchange rate gap for countries. And also the 58 to 66, the so-called trade reform. The International Division of Labor, the first time to promote the export-oriented policies, 58 to 66. And the other important one is the in 1968, the 9-year compulsory education. Okay, to foster human capital accumulation and labor quality, to increase to the junior high school education. And the 74 to 79 is the 10 major construction projects. Establishment of infrastructure, supply of public goods and services. In 1973, set up the Industry, Technology and Research Institute, ITRIT, as the technical centers for industries. And in 79, the establishment of Hsinchu Science Park Industrial Park. And also, all in all, in this all area, that the government provide a stable macroeconomic environment, okay, through the adequate monetary as well as fiscal policies, so that it makes the macro environment relatively stable, which of course provides a good foundation for the private sector to develop. Okay, and those are, if we want to have a short list regarding about the government policies for the past 30 years or 40 years of economic development, then I would say that all these lists on this slide actually are important policies. And as you can see, they are policy actually pro the market approach, which helps either restore the market, the function of the market, or try to set up the mechanism that in advance to help the improvement of the economy. Okay, and this is the growth regressions for the this is for economic growth, and this is for the investment. And you can see that for the economic growth, okay, and usually you get a negative from here for the initial GDP, which means that when you're starting from below, you grow faster, right? Therefore, you're negative. So you have low GDP per capita, actually grow faster. So it's converging, which means that you are converging from below. Okay, you're catching up from below and converging towards higher standard. That's one. This one consistent with the major argument in economic theory, catching up from behind. And the primary enrollment rate, this is the very common values that has been used by economists as a measure for education or human capital. Okay, and you find that this is also positive. Okay, which means that higher human capital improves the human quality and helps the economic development. We also get positive. And the Gini coefficient for land, okay, and Gini coefficient for income. You know Gini coefficient, we don't already discussed that. It's a measure for inequality. Okay, the higher this is an index between 0 and 1. If it close to 1, the higher the number, it means that the higher the inequality. Okay, and you get a negative sign, which is very important to find this significant negative sign, which means that if land that can be also a justification for land reform, because land reform, land to the tiller program, for example, it makes all these farmers have their own piece of land, so it makes the land distribution more equalized. Okay, so the Gini coefficient should be lower. Okay, and you get a negative, which means increase the economic performance. So it means that the more equalized the land distribution across farmers, across all the landowners, then it means that it helps the economic performance. So equality and economic performance. The income coefficient in income is also negative, but it's insignificant. I just said it's at the borderline. It's close to 2. Okay, so it's actually at the borderline. Okay, so it's still fine. It's a negative, which means that for more equalized income actually helps the economic development. Okay, and for the investment here, I should say that this one is very important to know that positive human capital investment facilitate capital investment. Okay, and that also tell you why the capital flight to this country is because, for example, to Taiwan. Why not in other Southeast Asia, for example, in Vietnam in 60 or 70? Why most of the investment in Taiwan? Because we have a better human quality, and therefore human quality actually helps the accumulation of capital stocks and investment in capital. Physical capital, this is physical capital, and this is human capital. So human capital reinforce or increase the return of physical capital. So human capital and the physical capital, they are complements. They are not substitutes. They are complements. And another important number find is this land coefficient has a negative and significant sign. So more equalized the land also helps investment, encourage the investment of private sectors to have a more equalized land distribution. That is also very, very important implications that we can derive for the economic policies. Okay, so any policy try to equalize the land distributions or try to improve the quality of labor through education, for example, it is conducive to the economic development and also to the investment activities, which of course is also good for the development of the economy. And this is the Gini coefficient of land and Gini coefficient of income. And you also see if you want to draw a line which best fits this scalar diagram, that would be also positive slope. Okay. So it means that the higher the inequality in land also leads to high inequality in income, vice versa. And the 10 major construction projects, including this here, just give you a list of the 10 major construction projects. Superhighways, the highways from north to south. Okay. So later we build the second superhighway, right? But the first the so-called 20th highway, electrify the railroad system, construction of the new international airport, construction of new harbors in Taichung, establish a nuclear power plant, for example, integrate steel mills. All these extra, these are all considered as, and also this one building a naphtha cracking plants for these heavy chemical product industries. Okay, so these are all very important for the major products. And here just give you a blueprint of Taiwan's economic development at different stage. Okay, and focus on different strategies. This agricultural development in 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s is industrialization process, and then we further divide into 3 stages. And then in 90s we have the so-called post-industrialization, and then later to the service-oriented. And towards development strategies, then we have the so-called regain our pre-war peak levels of land through land redistribution or land reform, the development strategies. And then here is the our oriented policy, and started from the labor intensive first, and then toward capital intensive, and then towards knowledge intensive. Okay, and the critical policy including land reform, the open up policies, and also the 10 major construction projects, and also the establishment of eateries, and also the technology transfer policies, and the so-called national innovation systems, and then also the financial reform, and together also the so-called restricted trade policy toward China in the mid-80s.